Hi, Steph. How are you?
Hey, I'm really good. How are you doing?
Well, thank you. Super excited that you're here because you were on my previous podcast that I was a co-host on a couple of times, and now you're back on the Blue Whale Pod.
I know we get to do one-on-one, which is really exciting.
You're listening to the Blue Whale Pod, hosted by me, Nikki from Blue Whale Communications. The pod is a place for business owners and entrepreneurs to come together and chat all things business, marketing, and entrepreneurship. That includes the highs, the lows, the lessons and surprises, and everything in between. If you have an idea for an episode or you'd like to be a guest, email me at Nikki, that's Nikki, at bluewhalecommunications.ca. Yes, it's so fun to do one-on-one. It's just a little more like intimate, I feel like.
100%. I was actually really impressed with the last podcast because the ability to manage three people's conversations, like without interrupting, like that takes skill. So I feel like now it will probably, I don't want to jinx ourselves, but I feel like it's going to be even easier.
Yeah, knock on wood. So for those people who didn't see the previous episodes, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do and what your focus is today.
Sure, yeah. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Steph Wharton. Currently, I'm a leadership and visibility coach, and I feel like I have this internal like struggle where I almost want to like change my title, but I've been using it for so many years because visibility can mean so many things for so many people. But one of the biggest focuses that I do in my own business, through my free content and through my paid work with my clients, it all focuses around like embracing your speaker identity. So I feel like it's kind of funny where people don't automatically think of speaking when they think of visibility. So then I have to go into this whole spiel. So maybe this is like my reminder or invitation to do that, to just own it that I don't know, like a speaking coach or like a speaking strategist, mentor. We'll figure out the title. But in any case, that is what I do right now. It's what I've been doing for a couple of years after many pivots. I went from being a designer to a brand strategist, even a design coach, and then eventually coaching just overall. And it led me to speaking, which is actually like if I were to look back and look at all the different pivots that I've done, speaking and collaborating in general with like other entrepreneurs and other creatives has been one of the main ways that I always chose to market. But it really came from a place of like having fun and like networking and collaborating with other people. And it naturally started to create a lot of like interest in my offers and in my passive products. And I was like, oh, maybe this is something that I get to like really lean into. And it's one of the main reasons why I ended up pivoting all the way into leadership and visibility coaching.
I love everything that you just said. We connected early on when you were working as a designer, and it was through a mutual connection. So a bit of that like collaboration, and you designed the visual elements of a project for us. And it's been really cool to watch you sort of pivot and change and um, like expand, or I don't know if expand is the right word, but just go into like the next level of yourself and your offerings. It's been really cool to watch.
Exactly. I think when you say like expand, like literally the first thing that came to mind for me, traditionally people think like, oh, niching. Because even when I went from like coaching just as a coach for designers, as that was the experience that I had, then I went to leadership coaching, leadership and visibility. Like there was this whole, I guess you could call it niching. But at the end of the day, it's like a way to like, as a person, I was growing, I was expanding. And then with my expertise, I was going deeper and deeper and deeper into the different areas that I just like fell more in love with, and essentially just brought me to a place where like I really really love my business. It's fun the way that I get to embody it in how I run my business and how I market, and it's fun in the way that I get to support my clients. So it's really very I don't know what the word would be, but like well rounded, how just everything bleeds into each other, which makes it a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. We mentioned this before we started recording, but as business owners, right? Like that's part of why we are business owners. We kind of get to pick and choose what we want to do, who we want to work with, what makes work fun for us. Like it's a really cool perk. It's probably the best perk, really.
It is. I think we need to give ourselves more, I guess, like power or like just embrace the fact that like we really are in control. Like, so if there's something about your business, your offers, your clients, maybe the way that you market, the way you take up space that you just don't like, figure out why, right? Is it like a fear or a block? Like, is there something that is just holding you back? Or is it just, it's not a good fit? If it's not a good fit, get rid of it or change it, flip it on its head, like do whatever you need because you're literally in control. So like, might as well build a business that like really allows you to, I don't know, experience like a little bit more ease and be able to just have fun because you created this entire thing from scratch. So might as well make it something that you look forward to doing and not something that you dread a little bit or experience like too much resistance through.
Yeah, for sure. Ease is my current like focus word. I'm trying to lean into that. And so like everything with the business and how it affects my personal life, all of those things, I'm just going for ease. And I love this conversation because it's super relevant to the whole point of why I have you on here today, because you posted a little while ago that you were shifting your, I guess, your main marketing strategy or your focus, your tactic. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about that decision?
Yeah, basically, for those of you that haven't been following me or haven't been connected with me and have no idea what I was doing, I used to have, I guess you could call it like a marketing slash visibility strategy that the primary focus was social media. And for context, I genuinely love Instagram. Like I had fun with it. I like creating content. I like connecting with people there. I don't typically have many, I guess, negatives around it or like negative perceptions around social media. So I was enjoying it, but that was the primary marketing strategy and way that I got out there, created content, and connected with people. And then if you were to look at the rest of like my marketing visibility stack, what I was doing is I had my podcast and my email. Probably email came second, then podcast. And at the very bottom of the list was speaking and collaborations, which is kind of funny and ironic because that's what I typically support a lot of my clients with. They come ready to speak on podcasts, to speak at either in person and virtual events, and to collaborate more and network with people. So I'm like, why am I helping people that love to do this when, yes, I do it, but it's like at the bottom of the list? It's almost like, hey, if I have time, I'll get to it. And especially with now becoming a new mama, I was like, I have way less time. Instead of being able to work either 5 days a week or even seven, if I really want to, and I'm going through like a busy season, I could only work like 2 days a week right now, right? Work Tuesdays and Thursdays. So something had to change. And I figured that's probably the biggest, let's say, time spend. It's what I spend the most of my time and energy is my marketing, my visibility. So what if I were to like flip it on its head and do it in a way that felt a lot more sustainable and even more fun? Since that seems to be the running theme for me right now. And so I flipped it. So now instead of being social media, email, podcast, and then speaking and collaborations, we've got speaking and collabs at the very top. Then I have the podcast because that's also very sustainable, right? You get to create the content, don't worry about it every single day. Then email. And then I have a combination of like threads and Instagram because I'm really vibing with threads right now. It just feels so easy. Like I can be nap trapped, not able to create content, but I just text on my phone a couple of sentences here and there, and there you go. There's content for people to engage with and to have conversations through. So it feels a lot more, I don't know, it makes sense for where I'm at in my life right now.
I love that. And do you feel like when you came upon this decision that you were going to kind of flip things upside down, did you spend a lot of time sort of planning what that was going to look like? Or did you sort of wake up one morning and go, today's the day I'm going to flip it and start with like a new strategy?
I did actually basically turn off the switch or turn it on or off, whichever one you want to pick. But it did feel like a overnight decision, but not because it was. I have spent several years, I want to say to maybe, let's just say 2 years, 2 years wanting to let go of Instagram. Maybe not fully, but just releasing a lot of the pressure to be on there. Because although I like it and I enjoy using the platform, it doesn't change the fact that I would still every now and then go through seasons where I felt a lot of pressure to be on. And if I didn't create the content, then what would happen to the business, right? So
Mm.
it was a desire that I had had for so long. But every time that I kind of decided, you know what, I'm going to do it, I'm going to finally release Instagram and focus on what I know really works for myself and my clients, which is speaking. I always either forgot about it or chickened out, or thought that I was doing it, but then I would still be on Instagram every single day. So it didn't quite work out. So when I came back from mat leave, it was actually a couple of weeks before I came back, and I decided to start having a little bit of fun with threads, just to be on my phone and do something while I was nap trapped. And
Mhm.
it just hit. I started creating content for fun, and I started connecting with so many people that loved speaking. And I was like, wait, why am I having so much fun talking about this, but not actually doing the thing? So that was it. I was, you know what? I'm not going to have the time, at least I was assuming, which turns out I was right, to be on Instagram every single day. So this has to be the wake up call. This has to be a non negotiable. I'm going to do it. I'm going all in. And that's it. That way I don't have to feel guilty if I am taking care of my baby and being woken up in the middle of the night or being interrupted in the middle of the day. It's okay because the things that I'm doing, like social media, aren't a priority, or is not, they're not as much of a priority as they used to be.
Mhm. So there's a big difference in like creating content for social media, which is largely you focused, right? Like you just have to do that. But then when we're talking about going on podcasts or getting speaking engagements, obviously there's that collaboration that we talked about earlier happening. So how like what's the difference, or how are you reaching out to people? Like how are you getting enough traction? And I know this is your expertise, but like how are you getting enough traction to make that your main marketing focus?
I think, I mean, we will definitely talk strategy, but one of the main things is just believing that it's going to sound so cheesy, but like believing it's going to work and actually trusting myself that I have the right answers, that I'm doing the right things. Because you can spend so much time second guessing your decisions, your strategies, everything that you're putting out there, and then creating from that energy. Or you can trust that you're doing all the right things and then start to attract and create opportunities that are actually going to create the results that you want. So when I do get in front of, let's say, let me think of an example. I spoke at a summit once. It was like a virtual conference. And through that, I was able to attract more speaking opportunities, sign clients, both like one on one, group programs, make passive sales. So when you look at how everything works and you're only really showing up for 1 hour to put on that presentation to help more people through your free content, and then that gets to lead to multiple new opportunities that create more opportunities and more sales, then it's like, well, that's pretty sustainable. It's just
Mhm.
about starting to lean into it more and then finding ways to almost like refine those strategies so that they essentially, just loosely speaking, they work better and better and better for you. So to answer your initial question, one of the things, other than just trusting myself and believing that is going to work, I lean very heavily into marketing speaking the way that I would market an offer. I see a lot of people just hoping that they could, I don't know, attract a speaking opportunity. Somebody's going to slide into the DMs and be like, I want you to speak at my mastermind or whatever the goal is. But that's it. It's just hoping and wishing that one day they'll make it, that they'll be big enough that people are going to reach out. And it's like, well, do you do the same with your offers? Like, do you sit there behind closed doors hoping that somebody's going to reach out and hire you, or do you market them, right? So you get to do the exact same thing with speaking.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I feel like a lot of people do that regardless of their platform or the topic or their focus, right? Like they'll show up on Instagram or LinkedIn, whatever, and it's sort of like a soft sell, right? Like they're kind of hoping that just by being there, someone's going to come to them, but they're not actually letting people know how they can work with them or what offers they have, what products and services, and so on.
Exactly. Like one of the things that I tell my clients, especially when it comes to like booking out your own visibility tour, is put yourself out there. So whether that means that every single day you talk about, hey, I'm a speaker, and you practice like thought leadership type of content to actually showcase what you specialize in and what you want to share with people. It might look like every single day, right? Or it might look like once a week. It doesn't matter, but the consistency is there. So you start to build a brand around your speaker identity. And I feel like once you start booking these opportunities, then you get to share about them, right? So now it becomes this ecosystem where not only are you promoting yourself as a speaker and building that brand, but you're also showcasing what you get to do. So now you're attracting more opportunities a little bit more organically because you have the speaking opportunities doing the heavy lifting for you as well, from a speaking standpoint and from a product suite, like whatever your products and offers are.
Yeah. Do you find that's different from when you were looking at social media as a main kind of focus? Like, did you still have that ecosystem happening when you're promoting mostly on social?
So I want to say I cannot technically answer that question because I've always been prioritizing speaking. So
Hmm.
the way that I had my ecosystem before, which still applies a little bit right now, is folks would find me through speaking engagements and then they would connect through Instagram. And then that's where you get to build a lot more of the relationships. You get to promote your offers. And then the first igniter of that relationship was the speaking engagements. That's where you get to build the most trust because people get to experience you like almost like in an intimate level, right? Especially if they hear you speak at an event. Like it's very intimate. It can be very transformative, I guess, because just to be able to hear firsthand somebody's experience and their own perspectives, it lands a lot deeper than just reading one piece of content, right? That can be buried in a lot of other people's pieces of content. So that one-on-one time really does go a long way. So when they come and connect with you, whether that's social media, email marketing, LinkedIn, wherever your social media quote unquote platform is, now that trust is already built. So they're just looking to consume more content to connect with you and really get to see, okay, are you really the person that I met at that event? And from there, it becomes a lot easier for them to go, yes, I want to hire you. So I always kind of had that. Now it's just leaning more into it and trusting that on social media, although that still could be the converting piece, people might either reach out just from speaking engagements and decide to work with you, or they might need that extra bit of, I don't know, learn a little bit more about you and your offers, etc. Then social media, sure, that can be the conversion point, but there doesn't have to be as much pressure to sell on there. So it can happen without you having to be on social media 24/7. So it's a lot lighter, that release where it's like, okay, this isn't the only way that I sell, right?
Yeah, I think that's so important to have like a holistic, well-rounded marketing strategy. I think a lot of people, I do a lot of obviously social media management. So I see this side of it a lot where people think I'm going to just post all the time and that'll be enough to get me clients or get me new customers. But like you said, it's really about having multiple touch points. And so whenever they're ready to convert, wherever they are in their journey, they're able to get whatever it is that they need from your content, whether it is a sell or just, you know, positioning yourself more as the expert, getting to know you better, understanding your personality more, like whatever it is that they need. And it's so important that social media is not just the only, moving piece in that ecosystem.
Exactly. I feel like it goes back to like what we are talking about, like just trusting and believing that things work when you have that little bit of like an ecosystem or just different marketing platforms. And like, let's know you don't have to be literally everywhere, but if you have
Mhm.
a couple different channels and you pair that with speaking or visibility, whatever that looks like for you, then you're not relying and putting all your eggs in one basket where it's like, if I don't say the right things on social media, then nothing's going to work. It's like, no, no, no. People are going to consume your content from all these different means, so it's just about building that puzzle and it will form the big picture or whatever it is that they need, like you said, in order to decide if they want to invest. But it's so liberating to realize that, okay, I've got all these things out there. Like I planted all these seeds, they're gonna work. Now it's just a matter of continuing to water them, continuing to do the thing, as opposed to being like, I've built this thing on Instagram, and if one piece falls, then everything's gonna fall apart. It's like, no, 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 it doesn't have to be like that. We get to all, and when I say we, I guess just yourself if you're a single team of one, but everything gets to work together.
Yeah. And I want to come back to, you said you don't have to be like in all of the places. And at the beginning of our conversation, you were talking about the four, focus points that you had and your order of priority. And then you mentioned why you were sort of flipping that on its head, the order of priority. So how can somebody go, okay, I have capacity to show up on three places, three marketing tactics. How can they decide which is the most important one for them to focus on?
I would say pick the either platform marketing channel or strategy that allows you to, as cheesy as it sounds, to shine. So if you notice that you get really excited or you get really confident, or even if nothing is very extreme, but you realize that the way that you connect with people is really powerful, like the conversations that you're having, or there's just something about it that it feels more effortless. You're like, okay, this is where I feel less pressure, is where I compare less, It's where I am really able to just like own my expertise and not second guess every single piece of content decision, whatever that might be. Lean into that. It's not going to be perfect, especially not at first. Like there's always going to be likely some doubt or some hesitation or unsupportive thought that you're having around some platform. But if you find the one that you experience the more ease and the least resistance, that's likely going to be the one that's going to convert the easiest, that's going to create the deeper connections with people so you can build a community, even if it doesn't lead to sales, right? Not every single connection has to be a sale. So it's just that can set your foundation so that anything else that you link to it, you don't have to pour 100% of your energy. The 100% is poured into that one platform where you're like, okay, you own it. You feel like you are all that, like you're like that big badass energy. That's going to go a much longer way as opposed to picking a platform where you experience resistance and you second guess yourself every single time. You can work through that, of course, work through the mindset, but that's going to be a lot harder and it's just going to take a lot longer to experience results through that platform.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I often say all the time, like, it doesn't, I think the general go-to answer to that question is go where your audience is. But like if my audience is on Facebook and I hate Facebook, it's not going to work. Like no matter
Yep.
what I do, no matter what I tell myself, I'm better off going for the 10% of my audience that's on a different platform that I enjoy than the 90% that are on Facebook. And so everything that you just said is exactly that. Like it goes back to the ease. Where do you feel comfortable? Where do you enjoy signing into every day? Because that's where you're just going to naturally build those relationships, right?
Exactly. I think if you're looking at the opposite, like literally what came to mind as you were talking was that's the same thing as if we're looking too much at numbers and we're like, oh, but let's say Instagram, like my story views aren't high enough. And I'm like, well, yeah, to have a wider reach would obviously be amazing. Like, haha, I'm a visibility coach. I get it. But who cares if you're not actually showing up, if you're not excited, if you're not selling, if you're doubting yourself, and like the reach won't matter, right? Like you can have 11 people consuming your content, and if a couple of those are actually converting, then that's all you need as opposed to hundreds, but then none of them are converting, right? So yes, 1000%. It's not just about everybody else. You got to make sure like you're running the show. You got to create the content. So you got to make sure that you're feeling really good about the decisions you're making.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So you touched on this a little bit, but now that you're into the new marketing phase, your new era, what differences have you noticed in what comes to like your business, your marketing, how you're showing up?
I'm noticing what's funny actually is I thought I had already like quote unquote made a name for myself under this like industry or this niche, let's say. But now that I'm like really being more unapologetic about it and like owning it in terms of like my own strategies as well, I notice a lot more people are actually referring me, like not necessarily to like clients, but like to opportunities. Like I notice a lot of people, whenever the conversation around mat leave comes up, people go immediately like, oh, Steph. Whenever a conversation around speaking comes up, they're like, oh, Steph. I hadn't had that happen before. Like maybe a little bit. It was like, yeah, okay. Like people knew that I was into visibility and all this stuff. But now I notice like it on like a much larger scale. So I'm kind of liking and vibing that the fact that like not only like speaking gets to do the heavy lifting for me, but also my reputation gets to do the heavy lifting for me. So I'm really, really liking that. The other thing I notice is this is kind of like an unsupportive thought pattern or like thing that my brain is doing, which is every now and then I do notice that I still feel a little twinge of pressure where I'm like, oh, but Instagram. And honestly, that's it, like we're human, right? Like that's what my human brain is choosing to do, is choosing to bring up that pattern. Like I've spent 5 years on Instagram, right? So that's something that's like very much a part of me. So my brain, it's almost like, I guess it's like almost like your ego trying to like keep you safe. And like, it's like, okay, no, let's go back. Let's create more content. And honestly, at least for me, what's really working is continuing to remind myself, like I have it written on a notebook. I could literally pull it up. I can see it right now. It says marketing strategy and self-trust right there. Um, and it
Love
just
that.
has it written down. It's like, this is what you're doing. This is why you're doing it. This is what you get out of it in your life, like spending time with my son and all that kind of stuff. And just like re-tapping into that, like the reason why I chose all this and why it's going to work, just allows me to go like, oh no, Steph, it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to post today. You don't have to post tomorrow. You don't have to post all week if you don't want to. So it's really changed the dynamic, but it's definitely something that I've noticed still kind of like creeping up now that I've made this big switch.
Yeah, that is so interesting that there's this like, little voice back there that we've kind of been conditioned to, Instagram, social media.
Yeah, it takes a lot of unlearning, even if you're like actively choosing to do something different. It's like, well, yeah, you're hardwired to do it the opposite way. So it's going to take some time. And I think it's so easy for us to slip back into those old habits just because, yeah, they do honestly feel more comfortable, more safe, and we trust them more perhaps because we've got all this proof, like all these years that said this is how you've built and grown your business. But it's like, you
Mhm.
know what about the other thing that you've been daydreaming for months or years? Like you're finally doing it. It's actually like go the long game. Let's lean heavier into it and like let's see what it can create because you've literally been wanting this for so long. But yeah, it's so interesting how our brains work, and we crave what's familiar. It makes sense.
Totally. Just from like a numbers perspective, how often were you posting or showing up or time spent on Instagram, social media before compared to what you're doing now, would you say?
Okay. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of the before because I've definitely gone through different phases. So let's see. I have gone through phases where I have spent 2 to 3 hours on Instagram every single day. I will completely own it. I was spending so much time. And I think that was a mix of creating content, launching. So it was in a very like heavy, busy season. That's what I was doing. And then I'm not
Mhm.
going to lie, part of it was also scrolling, right? Like getting distracted and sidetracked doing something else. So let's say 2 to 3 hours to seasons where I would spend anywhere between like 15 minutes to 30 minutes. So sometimes I would lean a little bit heavily into speaking. And then let's say I would go on vacation. So I would still show up every single day during vacation, but it was limited, right? So it's just like, okay, I would justify it that way. So that was probably my range. The most common was probably like an hour a day, let's say. That's probably the thing that I did the most before this. Now I want to say almost nothing, like maybe like 10 minutes a day ish. Like I'll start scrolling and I'll just turn it off.
Mhm.
I might post like a reel like once every other day or once a week, something like that. I'll reshare like pre-designed slides. So it's very easy. I don't actually have to think of content. I repurpose my podcast. So yeah, it's honestly, it's anywhere between like 10, 15 minutes ish. Like if I have a really boring day where I'm not trapped all day, sure, I will scroll. But I'm
Mhm.
not there marketing. I'm just being and in the DMs and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's very, very different compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned repurposing content because I think it's so underrated and it's such a great way to show up, quote unquote, on other platforms, right? On your third, fourth, fifth level marketing tactic, right? Like just repurpose the content that you already have.
100%. Like, and you cannot repurpose enough. Like I have, I mean, we've talked about it, but I have the podcast, I have email, social media on Threads and Instagram, and I have a private free community that I have. So I tend to repurpose on almost every single platform if I remember. And I had somebody in the private community literally like last week be like, oh, this is an awesome like episode. I'm going to have to listen to it. And I'm like, have you not seen me talk about it last week, like all throughout the other platforms? So like clearly people, whether they're your clients or just friends, they still miss it. So to be able to like plug and like still talk about things in every platform, it goes a long way.
Yeah, totally. Just a quick story. When we had the previous podcast, I don't know how many episodes in, and I put something on my Instagram stories asking people where they consume podcasts. And somebody who I felt like we have a pretty good back and forth messaged me and said, oh, are you starting a podcast? And I was like, I don't know how many episodes are already done in live, right? But it's again, like we just think that it's obvious what we're doing and we don't talk about it enough.
100%. For those that can't see me right now, I'm like trying not to laugh because that happens all the time, right? It can be your
All the time.
podcast, it can be your offers, it can be the fact that you speak. Like you cannot talk about it enough because people, whether they care about you or not, they've got other things to worry about. So, like, yeah, maybe they did see it because they love you and they consume all your content, but like, come on, they forgot the next day. Like, it's just, it happens.
100%. Okay, on that note, I love this. I could keep talking all day, but let's wrap it up because everyone is busy. But before we go, why don't you share your top piece of advice for people who are trying to figure out their best marketing tool or tactic?
I would say if you're just starting out, try try different platforms. And the reason I'm saying this is because so many people will tell you this is the best platform, that's the best platform, this is the best for SEO and whatever, right? And it's like, but it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like, what about what's right for you, right? And for me, a very tangible example, I used to dislike Twitter. I was like, I can't sit there. I think I created an account and never used it. I was like, I can't do like a couple characters. That's not me. I need to show up on video and talk and whatever. And all of a sudden, Threads came up and I started having fun with it while I was on mat leave, and I am obsessed. So it's technically the same system, it's the same way of showing up. I just never gave it a chance. So if you're just starting out, give it a chance, try it out. That's where you're going to find your best platform. And you've been around for a while, think about how you can create the most impact, because at that point you're likely figuring out, okay, how can I scale further, right? So figure out how can you create more impact in terms of how you can serve people, so how can you can reach more people, and specifically in sustainable ways, because adding more platforms just for the sake of it makes no sense. So figure out what's going to be the platform or collaboration opportunity or whatever that might be, that is just going to be low lift, so to speak, but allow you to reach bigger audiences. That way you can really make the most out of what you've already established in terms of your offers, your marketing, just go bigger at that point.
I love that. I think those are two super great tips. And I love how you separated it for newbies and like new business owners versus folks who are looking to scale. So good. Okay, so if anyone wants to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
This feels hilarious because we just talked about how I flipped my entire marketing stack upside down. But Instagram is still where I build relationships, where I chit chat in the DMs. So 100%, I won't be as active, but you can still find me on my stories. You can find me in the DMs. So Steph Wharton _ is where we can connect. I look forward to it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Steph. This was so good. And I can't wait to have you back again to talk more marketing because I feel like we can just talk all day.
We absolutely can. Thank you so much, Nikki.
Amazing. Thank you.